You tried Malachi?
We discussed many times that Jewish holidays are not only commemorative, but rather on that date of the calendar, whatever happened in the past is reenacted on that day itself. For instance, when we left Egypt on the 15th of Nisan, whatever influences were released by God to allow that to happen, happens every year on the 15th of Nisan. So when we speak about Me'abdus L'cheres, bondage to freedom, the forces which brought about freedom every year are unleashed on the 15th of Nisan. And the Talmud tells us that although we didn't actually leave Egypt until the morning, but the beginning of the redemption started at nighttime. And therefore, when do we celebrate the Seder? To acknowledge what happened on that day, it's at nighttime. The 15th night of Nisan, we eat the matzah, and we do many things. In time of the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, they ate the Paschal lamb. And they ate bitter herbs. Again, to be beneficiaries, so the Rav Kalatsky explains that although today, other than the eating of the matzah at the Seder is rabbinical, besides telling over the story, but the maror, the 4 cups of wine, the reclining, it's all rabbinical. What exactly is the value of all these rabbinical laws? So he explains that although the energies are there, but you have to have a vessel to capture those energies. So by creating a similar setting as existed at the time when we left Egypt, by creating those vessels, those receptacles, we're able to harvest those energies and be beneficiaries of the energies. The 4 cups of wine, the 4 expressions of redemption, the leaning, free men, the bitter herbs is to commemorate the embitterment of our lives. As a result of experiencing it at that level, we become direct beneficiaries. We're able to capture those energies to be full beneficiaries of those energies. And based on the degree that you understand and your level of internalization, that's the degree that you're actually impacted by those energies. And the same thing is true by every one of the holidays. So what about Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is the Day of Judgment. But what happened on Rosh Hashanah? Every time we blow the shofar during numerous moments, during the repetition, before we start the Musaf, and during the repetition of the Musaf, we blow so many blasts. They're set up in sets. And before we after we blow each set, we say, today is the birth of the world. Meaning the first day of Tishrei was the birth of the world. What do you mean, birth of the world? It's the 6th day of creation. Adam was created on the 6th day, as the narrative reads in the Torah. So why does it mean today is the birth of the world? Now, why did God create the world? God created the world. The world only took on value once Adam was created. Until Adam came on the scenes, the world had no value. So for all intents and purposes, when did the world take on its value? On the 6th day of creation, when Adam became a fully functioning person and was put in the Garden of Eden. That's when it happened. Now, based on this principle, that whatever happened initially, so what was the first day of Tishrei for the first time in history? It's the day Adam was created. 6th day of creation. What happened on that day? Adam was put in the Garden of Eden. The world was at the most advanced spiritual level. Evil was not part of man yet. Adam was created, and Adam was given a dictate. You're permitted to eat from all the trees of the garden except one tree. the tree of knowledge, because it's Tova, because it's good, but it contains evil on an absolute level. And God says, that tree you're not permitted to eat of its fruit. Now, before Adam ate of that fruit, if Adam would have restrained himself not to eat, what was the level of existence? It was at a level that was about to be transitioned into eternity. If he wouldn't have eaten, he would have withstood the test. The world would have immediately transitioned to eternity, and the world would not be limited to 6,000 years. Adam would have not been subject to death. It was only because he, when I use the word messed up, he did something which was catastrophic. It's not even to be fathomed how catastrophic it was. He became a finite person. The world became intermixed, interwoven with evil. Because since the whole world was created for Adam, just as Adam himself became putrefied due to ingesting this fruit, which had contained absolute evil, the whole world being connected to Adam, because it's all to accommodate his function, to be able to meet his purpose, also was affected and impacted negatively by the tree of knowledge, by the evil of the tree of knowledge. All existence, all creation. Now, when did Adam eat of the tree of knowledge? What hour was it on Friday? It happened at the 10th hour, the Talmud says. The 10th hour of the day, that's when Adam ate of the tree of knowledge. And soon afterwards, there was a dialogue to him, Hashem, the snake, Chava, and Adam. And afterwards, they were driven out of the Garden of Eden. So based on the principle that every holiday is a reenactment of what originally happened, what happened at the beginning of the sixth day of creation? The world was nearly perfect. Before Adam ate of that tree of knowledge, Adam himself had energies flowing through him that there's nothing been the equivalent of that since that time. Because it was pre-sin. So that means when we experience Rosh Hashanah before the afternoon, we're experiencing an energy that energy was pre-sin energy, which is the most advanced level of holiness in existence. So when we pray Shachris and Musaf, or let's say Shachris, what is that time period we're praying? When we speak to God, we have an audience with God. What is the state of affairs in the world? It's a state of affairs, there's no evil. Because if it's a reenactment, that means the energies flow on that day like it flowed originally. So that means the day starts at the most advanced level of Kedusha, of holiness. What I'm telling you is the Ramchal. What happened after Adam ate of the tree of knowledge in the 10th hour? You know what happened? The world snow dived, went down. It became a different existence. That happened in the afternoon. So the day starts on the unfathomed level of holiness because of what the reality of the day was. It's pre-sin, and then afterwards, it nosedives. Because what? Because now evil was introduced into existence. So the Ramchal writes, by every holiday, the holiday always starts at a lesser level of holiness, and as we continue approaching the end, it intensifies in Kedusha. It intensifies in holiness. And by the end of the day, before sundown, it's the pinnacle of the holiness of that day. And that's the way it always works. It says the only exception is Rosh Hashanah. Because every other holiday was post-sin. You start at a lower level, you advance to a greater level. But Rosh Hashanah, which was pre-sin, when the day starts, that means it started at the most advanced level until Adam ate of the tree of knowledge. When he ate of the tree of knowledge, he took the oxygen out of the room. Everything started to wither and go down. Okay. We find that Yaakov had believed that Yosef was devoured by a beast. And then he sent his sons to Egypt. They come back and he said, "Oh, Yosef Chai, Yosef's still alive." Yaakov was ecstatic. And they shared with their father what Yosef had said. And Yaakov is ready to go to Egypt to see his son, Yosef, his most beloved son. He comes. Yosef has two children, Ephraim and Menashe. And Yaakov blesses the sons of Yosef. That the sons of Yosef, Ephraim and Menashe, should have the same status as Reuven and Shimon. They have the status of tribes. Although they were grandchildren, they were not his children. Nevertheless, because the way Yosef had raised them and what Yosef represented, they have the status of tribes. And Ephraim and Menashe are tribes of Israel. Now, when Yosef had found out that his father is not well and meant he's dying, immediately rushed there with Ephraim and Menashe, and Yaakov had given a blessing to his two grandchildren. He had said to them, "V'yidgu l'rov b'kerem words. You should increase like fish in the midst of the land." That was the bracha he had given them. V'yidgu, from the word dag. Dag in Hebrew is a fish. You could say v'yirbu. They should increase, numerous. Why do you use the term yidgu as dogim, fish? So Rashi over there cites the Chazal that the fish themselves are under the water. They're not subject to the evil eye. So just as fish are not subject to the evil eye, so there's a double connotation, multiply numerously, but in addition, you should have the characteristic of the fish. The fish is not subject to the human eye, therefore Ayin Hara has no relevance. Yosef's children should have that characteristic. They're not subject to the Ayin Hara. Whatever it is, we're able to deflect it. Okay? That's the Chazal. That's the Medrash. I'd said something differently. Now, we find that during the Great Flood, it says, all that was on dry land perished. Kol Hashem b'charav mesu, right? The animals, the insects, the reptiles, birds, anything within on the terrestrial area was destroyed, except for what was in the ark, species that went into the ark. So the question is, what about the fish? Where were the fish? Were the fish destroyed? During the Great Flood, he said, well, fish could swim in water. But the Gemara tells us that the water of the Mabul was sulfuric, and anything that was in that water disintegrated. So if that's the case, the fish couldn't live. So there's an argument exactly, but the fish actually were not subject to the Great Flood. They were able to survive. One opinion is that the Great Flood did not affect Eretz Yisrael. Israel was not covered with the Great Flood. So the question is, if it wasn't inundated with the flood waters, that means people could have survived there. So Gemara says, no. You have toxic gases that come as a result of opening the well springs, and therefore everything on dry land perished from asphyxiation, from this poison gas. That's what happened. But the fish that were under the water, so that the proximity of Israel was not affected. The water there was not sulfuric, it was regular water. So when they were able to transition out of the boat, one, they transitioned to the other. That's what happened. So the fish were not subject to the Great Flood. Now, the animals were. I'd shown that when the animals came out of the ark, the world was a different world. The dimension of the world was different. So now the question is, the dimension of the fish, were they of the original creation, or they were the new creation. Every animal that came out of the ark was considered like a new beginning. We're starting all over when you leave the ark. The fish were from the original creation. The dimension of the original creation, although physically they may have looked alike, the innateness in terms of its value has greater value. Because those fish were meant initially, if Adam wouldn't have sinned with the golden calf, with the tree of knowledge, they all would have been eternal. As a result of that, the bracha Yaakov given to his grandchildren, Yidgul Rov Kerabot, you should be like fish. You should be part of the original bracha, pre-sin, pre-great flood, not post-great flood, because the great flood had nothing to do with the fish.